With a good amount of A and B list villains already making appearances in Spider-Man's live-action rogues gallery, I wonder what villains they will do next in the MCU Spider-Man College trilogy. Let's talk about that. What's up guys, Scarlet here, and today we will be talking about which villains could be in MCU Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6, or more specifically, the ones I want to personally see make an appearance in some capacity. Before I start the video, I talk a lot of Spider-Man, but also Marvel, and I enjoy the occasional DC, so if that sounds good to you, hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on so you don't miss any uploads. So first up, my first option has to be the Scorpion. I believe he's the most likely option for Spider-Man 4 at least, because he has been set up perfectly to have a vendetta against Spider-Man, and he was teased in the Homecoming post-credit scene. And you know how in the post-credit scene of No Way Home we've seen the symbiote? I believe there could be a possibility of seeing Matt Gargan's Venom, hopefully, because that would actually be a cool idea and very different from like the traditional Venom that we've seen on screen. If you don't know, in the comics, basically Matt Gargan, the Scorpion, became Venom at one point. Eddie Brock was not bonded with the symbiote at this time. If I'm not mistaken, Eddie Brock was actually anti-Venom when this happened, but the symbiote was seeking a seasoned criminal who had hatred for Spider-Man, and the symbiote happened to find Matt Gargan, and the Scorpion accepted the symbiote's offer and was transformed into the new Venom. I wonder how they would make this story, because there's a lot of different routes they could go. They could introduce Norman Osborn again and maybe make him make the technology for Scorpion's suit. They could also introduce Walker Sloan and Alchemax. They could have J. Jonah Jameson hire Scorpion to take down Spider-Man like they did in the animated series, and Scorpion fails the first time, then finds a symbiote somehow after Peter ditches the symbiote. Or maybe they could introduce Kingpin, and Kingpin could free Mac from jail, give him the Scorpion suit, and have him go after Spider-Man. There's a lot of options they have when it comes to Scorpion, and he's already set up to be a villain with a good personal vendetta that makes sense against the Wallcrawler. Speaking of Kingpin, he has been brought into the MCU through Hawkeye, and he's originally from the Daredevil Netflix show, which is now on Disney+. Kingpin is a great choice for an overarching villain for this next MCU Spider-Man trilogy coming up. Almost like a background character, he could be working in the background to build his criminal empire, but also working to stop anything in his way, like Spider-Man. Spider-Man 4 could possibly be set a couple years after No Way Home, I would assume, at least, with Peter starting college by this time. Spider-Man has become a global icon, very famous, and everyone knows him. He stepped his game up as the web slinger, and maybe in this time Kingpin could have also set up his criminal empire after somewhat recovering from Hawkeye and Daredevil Born Again, whenever that does happen. But Spider-Man has been putting dents into Kingpin's income, so Kingpin could start to hire villains to keep Spider-Man distracted, perhaps similar to Spectacular Spider-Man with Tombstone doing something like that. So by the end of the trilogy, Spider-Man could defeat Kingpin, put him in jail with possibly the help of a Daredevil team up. That'd be pretty good, and that's something that the fans want to see on the big screen, including myself. And since Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock showed up in No Way Home, this seems like even more of a no-brainer, especially with the Daredevil show being renewed on Disney Plus as Daredevil Born Again. So with that, Kingpin could be a really great option. So now next up, this isn't a villain, she's more of like a criminal anti-hero if anything. Black Cat. Black Cat, again, isn't a villain. She does steal, but she has a good heart, like deep down, very deep down. Just depends on which Black Cat and like kind of how they write her, more or less. But since the symbiote was introduced at the end of No Way Home's post-credit scene, I believe that we could possibly see Black Cat on the big screen, but I'm sure Sony would have to okay it first, because they might use Black Cat for their Sinister Six lineup, or make a movie on her or something. I think Black Cat would be a great idea, especially when they do the symbiote arc. They might not do the symbiote arc in like Spider-Man 4, maybe like 5 or 6, but when they do have Peter get the black suit, I think it is crucial that Black Cat shows up. And this is for like a couple of reasons. One, mainly because this is in almost every Spider-Man media. It's like very common for her to show up and stroke Peter's ego to get him to embrace the darkness of the symbiote and the power that he himself already possesses, but not just that, the power that the symbiote possesses, and to like just ditch Peter Parker. And as well, it could be a love story perhaps in some aspect, because typically Black Cat does love Spider-Man, but not Peter as much, and Peter could not really realize that at first maybe, and learn his lesson or something along those lines. Especially at the end of No Way Home, Spider-Man lives on, Peter Parker doesn't, because of the spell from Doctor Strange. No one knows who Peter Parker is, so introducing Black Cat could be a good tie with Peter trying to cement himself back into society and build his life again as Peter Parker, while Black Cat on the other hand tries to embrace being Spider-Man and to make Spider-Man forget about being Peter Parker. Now I highly doubt this next one will happen for like a number of reasons, but I guess you never really know. So I would love to see Hobgoblin for a couple of reasons. One, just because Peter did just fight Norman Osborn, so if they do introduce Norman Osborn again and the Hobgoblin shows up, obviously we the audience know Hobgoblin isn't Norman, or most likely isn't Norman at least. There's a possibility, but like that's highly unlikely and that would be a little weird. But here's where I think would be a great mystery. Peter doesn't know who the Hobgoblin is, but he will most likely think Norman Osborn is, since he is the one who killed Aunt May in No Way Home and had similar gear, similar glider and weapons, all that kind of stuff. So it could be a mystery detective kind of thing, movie type situation for Peter, and it would be cool to see how he unfolds the mystery of who is the Hobgoblin. And they could draw inspiration from Origin of Hobgoblin comic, where there were so many decoys of Hobgoblin until Spider-Man unmasked him at the end. If you guys want to check that out, I recommend it. It's a great story. First, maybe he could think it's Norman Osborn because, again, like the technology and everything is very similar to Green Goblin in terms of the weapons and the glider and all that stuff. So maybe Peter could think it's Norman at first and then come to find out it actually isn't Norman Osborn. So he digs and finds it to be someone else, and then that ends up being a dead end or something. Just have this really fucking with Peter's head because he keeps thinking back to No Way Home and how Green Goblin killed like his last family member, basically. I'm gonna go back to this thought in a second, but I do need to mention Ned Leeds from the MCU. I believe Hobgoblin would be a great idea, don't get me wrong, and they did seem to tease it in No Way Home when Ned Leeds said to Peter that he wouldn't become a supervillain to try to kill him. That was a nod to Harry trying to kill Peter in Raimi's Spider-Man 3 and TASM 2. And Ned Leeds is the Hobgoblin in the comics, but basically they gave MCU Ned, Genki Lee's, I think that's his name, they gave Ned his personality from Miles Morales, sorta. Now my issue with this is like a couple things. This Ned Leeds I don't think would fit the character of the Hobgoblin, like the actor himself, but maybe that's just me. I think someone else should play Hobgoblin and Ned Leeds, and perhaps maybe there could be even two Ned Leeds, but completely different people in the MCU. That could be like a really interesting mystery that Peter tries to solve, because Peter remembers everything that everyone else doesn't from previously. Maybe they could have Chameleon work with the Hobgoblin to keep up this like decoy thing or something like that. That would be interesting too. And with there being two Ned Leeds, this could tie back into the bigger multiverse problem going on in the MCU. So after the dead end, Peter could find out Hobgoblin is Ned Leeds from someone or somewhere somehow, and he could be thinking it's his Ned Leeds, his best friend from high school, but it's actually comic accurate Ned Leeds. I think that would be a great plot twist. So now the last option, and this wouldn't really be for Spider-Man 4, and he wouldn't be the villain, but just like an overarching character in the universe for now, but Norman Osborn. Now this is a very divided opinion. A lot of people want a new Norman Osborn, but a lot of people don't, because we just seen him in No Way Home, which is understandable. I understand both sides, but I think that overall we would be better off introducing Norman again so that we could get Harry Osborn, and maybe they could introduce Gwen as well. Obviously Harry and Gwen are villains, kind of side characters, but we can get that trio dynamic that introduces just new characters in general, or just characters we haven't seen in a while on the big screen and possibly done correctly or even better than previous iterations. And maybe if they introduce Kingpin, he could have his foot on Norman's neck like how he did in the animated series, so that could cause him to become a villain, Green Goblin or something, but not in Spider-Man 4, maybe in like 5 or 6. But I think Norman should just be Norman for this next trilogy, maybe creating technology but not actually putting himself into a costume, unless maybe they could make him become Iron Patriot for a short period of time, which I think that would be fine, before snapping and turning into the Green Goblin. That could be interesting as well. Also as well, since the symbiote is here in the MCU, perhaps it could spawn Carnage and maybe bond with Norman Osborn to become the Red Goblin. That would be fucking insane to see on the big screen, and as well something that we have not seen before. Maybe if they were to do Red Goblin on the big screen, that could be how Tom Holland's Spider-Man dies, and they could introduce Miles Morales into the MCU as well. That would be like so crazy and take like a huge twist. Now these next few would just be side characters, so characters that aren't necessarily one-offs, but they aren't as big as a threat as the previous ones, that could show up for a little bit and Spidey defeats them like pretty quick, sends them back to jail, you know, some light work. I think a proper Shocker would be cool, one that actually shoots like shock vibration blasts from a distance out of his gauntlets. I know we had Shocker in Homecoming, but I don't really think that was like a good accurate like representation of Shocker. And then next the Chameleon, which I just mentioned. We technically do have a Chameleon in the MCU, he just didn't become Chameleon yet. It's this guy from Far From Home, but yeah, it's this guy. He's Kraven the Hunter's brother, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't use him as Chameleon in this movie. That would have been pretty cool. but I guess, you know, maybe they could just save it for later. And then lastly, the Spot, who, if you don't know, he can create portals basically, and he's pretty cool. He could put up a good decent fight for Spider-Man. That's everything I got for you guys today. So with that being said, if you are new to the channel and enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. If you already have subscribed, don't forget to leave your opinion on what we talked about today, or your opinion on today's video in the comments below. I always read and respond to comments. Personally, me, my top 3 villains, I really want to see Kingpin, Hobgoblin, and Red Goblin. Red Goblin would be so fucking cool. Like, just look at this guy. He's fucking like this dude's a tank. Do you guys agree with me? Do you guys want to see those 3 villains most as well, or do you guys want to see other villains? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It lets me know if you guys want more of this type of content. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time.